say, okay, this Tim Sheehy guy, who is he? Where'd he come from? Right. I'm just asking.
Wait a minute. Here we go. Private equity behemoth Blackstone Incorporated is the company's largest single stockholder.
Oh, there you go. Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
You just said it all right there.
Fact is, according to Montanans for Limited Government, she sent out a great article about the connections between Tim Sheehy and all the DEI and ESG crap that is being pushed by the globalists. And man, there's so many connections there, you can't believe it. I mean, we've even got some of their own writing on this, and all I can tell you is that they believe in UN Agenda 21, and they believe in environmental social governance, and they believe in diversity, equity, and inclusiveness as part of their political platform. We've got some of the articles that have been published about Tim Sheehy, and he's actually interviewed for many of them so that he can tell people firsthand how much he believes in ESG and in DEI and in all these Marxist socialist crappy programs that are pushing us into global government. And then he goes on to talk about how it is so important that we understand that climate change is such an important part of this whole process, and that we need to be fully on board with all the programs that basically are part of Agenda 21.
He hit all the right buttons there, didn't he?
Oh, boy. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. He is now a publicly traded company. I believe BAER are the ticker symbols. But guess what? Almost all of his contracts that he's got are with the U.S. federal government.
Well,
Talk about in bed with the government. You couldn't get any more in bed. He talks about D.A. Davidson, who was the brokerage that handled his public offering, about how wonderful it was that they were following the ESG guidelines that were coming down from international sources on environmental social governance. Let's go ahead and play that video clip. And I can just tell you, anytime the so-called establishment says somebody's good, that's when you head for the exits.
Bridger Aerospace is one of the nation's largest privately held aerial firefighting companies, and it will start trading on the NASDAQ today. And with me is the founder and CEO, Tim Sheehy, to explain the company a little bit.
The wildfire crisis is really spreading globally. As we see the effects of climate change and urbanization along the wildland-urban interface, and we experienced a pretty rapid uplift in demand from our customer base, which consists of state governments and federal agencies. So we recognized that, had a technology that was desired by that market, and have really leaned into it and seen great successes with the added aircraft like you see behind me, our CL-415 EAF Super Scoopers, complementing our surveillance aircraft. The Forest Service's demand for what we were able to do was extremely high, and very quickly became a pure play company, which we are today, 100% focused on wildfire response, climate change related wildfire crises. We're a business that's not dependent on that, not consumer spending. We're federally funded, state funded. We want to continue to grow, and being the position we are in now as a company, growing in the public markets will be better for us as owners. It'll be easier for us to acquire new airframes and get new forms of financing as a publicly traded security.
This is a very capital intensive business.
Exactly right. I mean, right behind me here, we have 6 of these aircraft, and this is a $30 million plane. And as I mentioned, being a ground force commander as an officer, I was responsible for the planning and tactical direction of our teams on the ground. And that's when I was introduced to this capability of aerial ISR, of having aircraft overhead, giving us that real-time data in infrared and daytime video, and giving us all that kind of situational awareness that you wouldn't normally have as boots on the ground task force. And understanding how the power of that air-ground team integrated was a force multiplier. The nation can benefit from this just like the military did overseas.
So my question is, in all your surveillance stuff, sorry, I was on the other side of that my whole career.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I know about all that. And when you're turning this loose on the American citizenry and you're bragging about it, I got a problem with it.
Mhm.
He and somebody else have 30,000 acres in this Montana land conservation,
Oh,
and
bingo.
they are raising sustainable beef.
Mhm.
Well, I've been in Montana all my life, and there's all these families that have raised beef for generations after generation. But when I hear the word sustainable, it makes my skin crawl because we know where that comes from.
Mhm.
So I'm going to put two things together. I'm going to put climate change and sustainable beef together, trying to figure out how that represents any of my values. I mean,
Does he raise any bulls?
yeah.
Because there's stuff that goes with bulls, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there is, but we better not go there because he's also into DEI, and that means that you're really not supposed to use pronouns.
He's a diversity guy, so is what you're saying.
Mhm.
I'd love to see what he says about ESG.
Remember when Zinke was pushing so hard in the drone thing? Okay, remember?
Yeah.
Drones? So is Tim Sheehy. He's really into the drone thing. Guess what? The EPA has now 20,000 drones monitoring all over the United States to make sure that everybody is following their environmental regulations.
Well, sure, because the Fourth Amendment doesn't matter. We can't be secure in our persons or papers or our things. You know, there's no due process of law.
Okay, now let's look at the biggest client. The biggest client is government. That's where most of his contracts are focused in either a federal or state government. Does that look to you like that might be a conflict of interest?
Might be to me.
It says the contracts with the U.S. agencies have provided around 3/4 of the company's revenue. She estimated in March earnings call, federal contracts accounted for 96% of the company's revenue in 2022, according to Securities and Exchange Commission filings.
I just wonder where all the money came from to start it. I mean, you said he had 6 $30 million airplanes.
Wait a minute. Here we go. Private equity behemoth Blackstone Incorporated is the company's largest single stockholder.
Bingo.
Oh, there you go. Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
You just said it all right there. They have more power actually than the federal government financially. So I think that's an interesting. What article is that, Thumper?
This is Bloomberg Government.
I like that it's basically Blackstone with government contracts.
Yeah.
You can't get any more in bed than that.
Yeah, and that's why, I asked the question, where did this guy come from? Like you gave me a lot of information. Quite honestly, I've been farming and ranching a lot lately, so I haven't had a lot of free time to do analysis. But when you show those articles and play those clips, I mean, my goodness, where do you pick up any conservative values at all?
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. It's an interesting thing Thumper put up there. 96% comes from federal contracts. Mm-hmm. I guess the other 4% is state contracts.
Yeah. That's pretty much it. Thumper, what do you think about all this? They have tried to throw Matt under the bus, and he's been one of the best Congress people in this country. He's been one of the 20 standouts in this country. If you go to his constitutional voting record from New American or any of the constitutional indexes, he's the only one. He's got 100% constitutional voting record since he's been in office.
Well, amazingly, I think that even you look at Matt Rosendale, he's kind of, I'm pretty impressed with what he's done in Congress.
I am too. He's one of the good ones. And guess what? He's the one that they're sure under the bus for Tim Sheehy because Matt was going to run for that Senate office.
Well, yeah, I know, but Trump is endorsing Sheehy too, right? Trump has a long history of endorsing and backing the wrong horse.
No kidding.